Students, it is very important for a subject to agree with its verb, and therefore we have something known as subject-verb agreement in English grammar. Now, there are many rules that come under subject-verb agreement, but first I want us to look at the golden rule of subject-verb agreement. And the golden rule is a singular subject takes a singular verb, whereas a plural subject takes a plural verb. So what does this rule mean? Let's take a look at these sentences here. Bill goes to the market every day. Our subject here is Bill and our verb here is goes. So since we have a singular subject which is Bill, we should have a singular verb which is goes. Now let's take a look at the second sentence. The books are on the table. So our subject here is books and books are in plural form, and therefore that means that according to this rule, the verb should also be in the plural form when the subject is in the plural form. So this is the golden rule of subject-verb agreement. Well, let's look at the first rule of subject-verb agreement, which is two or more singular subjects when joined by the word and, they require a plural verb. Well, let's take a look at the first sentence here. Gold and silver are precious metals. So, we have two singular subjects here, gold and silver. Both of them are joined by the word and the rule says that whenever two singular subjects are joined by and, they need a plural verb, which is and in this case. Well, let me give you one more example. So when I say Sam and I are playing in the garden, so we have Sam, who is my best friend, and we have I, and both of these singular nouns are joined by the word and therefore I say Sam and I are is our plural verb and are playing in the garden. So the basic rule is, or the first rule is, that when two singular subjects are joined by and, we need a plural verb. So, however, there is an exception to this rule. Let's take a look at that exception. If the nouns refer to one idea, then the verb is singular. Let me give you an example there. Red beans and rice is my favorite dish, which is true. I love red beans and rice. So when I say red beans and rice, I'm referring to it as one idea. I'm talking about red beans and rice as one. Therefore, I have used a singular verb here, which is. So that is the exception if there are two nouns in a sentence or two subjects in a sentence. However, when they refer to one idea, we should use the singular noun and we should use the singular verb and not the plural verb. So that is the first rule of subject-verb agreement. Let's take a look at the second rule. The second rule of subject-verb agreement is when two or more singular subjects are connected by or nor, they require a singular verb. Well, let's take a look at the first example. The ranger or the camper sees the bear. So we have two singular subjects here, the ranger and the camper. And therefore, our verb sees is also singular. And that is the rule, right? When two singular subjects are joined by or nor, they take the singular verb. Well, what happens when both these subjects are not singular but plural? Like in the second example, we have the rangers or the campers. Those are our subjects here are plural in nature. What happens to the verb? The verb also takes a plural form, which is see. And what happens when either one of the subjects is either plural or singular? Let's take a look at the third example. The ranger or campers see the bear. So our subjects are ranger and campers. Ranger here, our first subject, is in singular form, whereas campers, our second subject, is in the plural form. And if you look at the verb see here, it is in the plural form. And why is it in the plural form? Because the subject that is closest to it is in the plural form. So when either one of the subjects is plural, then plural or singular, the verb has to agree with the subject that it is nearest to. So let's take a look at the next sentence. The rangers or the camper sees the bear. So again we have two subjects, rangers which is plural and camper which is singular. The verb is sees and it is in singular form. And why is it in singular form? Because it's nearest to camper which is also in the singular form. So this is our second rule. Okay, let's go through the second rule again. When two singular subjects are joined by or nor, they take a singular verb. However, there are exceptions. When both these subjects are plural, the verb becomes plural, and when either one of the verbs is plural, then the verb should agree with the subject that it's nearest to. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our third subject-verb agreement rule. Well, our next subject-verb agreement rule is pertaining to collective nouns. Well, collective nouns are nouns that refer to a group of people, and the third rule is a collective noun always takes a singular verb. Let's look at the first sentence. The committee has issued its report. So here our collective noun is committee, and if you look at our verb has here, it is singular in nature. And why is it singular in nature? Because here we are referring to the committee, which is a collective noun, and we are referring to committee as a whole. Let's take a look at the second sentence because something is a little different there. The committee are divided on one minor point. So here we have our collective noun committee, but what is the nature of the verb that we have used here? Are is a plural verb. And why have we used a plural verb with a collective noun? Because the rule says that a collective noun takes a singular verb. Well, we have done that because in the second sentence, when we talk about the committee, we are referring to the committee not as a whole, but to its individual members. So, in the first sentence, when we are talking about committee, we were talking about committee as a whole. But in the second sentence, we are referring to its individual members, and therefore, we use the plural verb are. So, let's take a look at the next sentence. The company is successful. The company is again our collective noun, and as the rule says, when we use a collective noun, we use the singular verb. So, the company is successful. So, this agrees with the rule. But let's take a look at the next sentence. The companies are successful. Here, an important thing to understand is collective nouns can also come in plural forms. Like in this sentence, company. Company is a singular form and companies is the plural form of the collective noun company. And therefore, when a collective noun is plural in nature, it takes a plural verb. So, these were our basic rules of subject-verb agreement pertaining to the collective noun. Well, let's look at these words now. We have news and we have mathematics. So, when we look at these words, they may seem plural to us. Probably that's because of the S that is there at the end of these words. Although they are singular in meaning. So, news here is actually singular in nature. So, if I were to make a sentence with news, I would say the news is true. So, the news that I saw on TV is true. So, do you all see how I have used the singular verb here? Because news, although it may appear or the form may be plural, but it is actually singular in nature and therefore I use a singular verb with it. Let's come to mathematics. So, mathematics is also singular in meaning and therefore if I have to make a sentence with it, I would say mathematics is an interesting subject. So, if you all see here, I have used is with mathematics because mathematics is singular in nature and it takes a singular verb. So, this was our third rule pertaining to collective nouns. Let's move on to our fourth rule. Well, the fourth rule of subject-verb agreement is pertaining to pronouns. And the fourth rule is that these pronouns here, they always take the singular verb. So let me just read out these pronouns that always take the singular verb. And these pronouns are either, anybody, somebody, everybody, each, nobody, neither, anyone, someone, no one, nothing, everything, anything, something. These pronouns, they always take the singular verbs. So let's take a look at the examples that we have here. The first sentence is, everyone has gone to watch the movie. So here, our pronoun is everyone, which is our subject, and it takes the singular verb because that is the rule, right? Whenever we use these pronouns in sentences, they take a singular verb. Like in this case, we have has, and it takes a singular form. Let's take a look at the second sentence. Anything is possible. Anything, which is our subject, which is one of these pronouns, takes the singular verb is. The next sentence is, each of the cakes is tasty. Now let's just talk about the third sentence in detail here because this can be a little confusing sometimes. We have each, which is a pronoun from this list, which always takes a singular verb. But we have this phrase here of the cakes. And if you see, cakes is plural in nature. But do not get distracted by this phrase because this is just a distractor. We are talking about each, and therefore we are to use a singular verb, which is in this case. So just remember, when we use each, we have to use a singular verb. Do not get distracted by this phrase in the middle. So it's each of the cakes is tasty, and that is the rule. These pronouns take a singular verb. However, there are some pronouns or some indefinite pronouns that always take plural verbs, and those indefinite pronouns are both, few, many, several, and others. So I've used some of them in these sentences. Let's take a look at these sentences. Many have taken the test. So here our subject is many, which is our indefinite pronoun from this list here. And if you look at the verb have, it is a plural verb. And this goes with this rule, right? These pronouns always take the plural verb. Let's take a look at the next sentence. A few are not coming. So few is our indefinite pronoun here, and it's also our subject. So what is the rule? When we use pronouns like both, few, many, several, and others, we use the plural verb. Therefore, with few, we use are, which is our plural verb. Now, we have taken a look at our fourth rule that with these pronouns, we have to use a singular verb, and with these pronouns, we have to use a plural verb. But there are some exceptions, and I want us to take a look at those exceptions to get better clarity on our fourth rule. Let's take a look at the exception. Now, these pronouns some, any, none, all, and most, these pronouns either take the singular verb or the plural verb depending on its meaning. So let's understand that better with the help of these examples. But before we move on to the examples, I have made an acronym for you for these indefinite pronouns, which is sanam, and you all can remember these pronouns with the help of this acronym here. So we have some, any, none, all, and most. Now, just remember one thing, that sanam pronouns can either take the singular verb or the plural verb depending on its meaning. So, let's take a look at the first example here. Some of the debt has been paid off. So, some of the debt is our subject, and we have used the indefinite pronoun some here. And if you look at the verb, which is has, it's a singular verb. So, here, and this is, let me just draw something. This here is my debt, and I'm only talking about this debt. So, I'm saying some of this debt, probably half of it, I have paid, this has been paid off. So, when I say some of the debt has been paid off, I mean that some of my one debt has been paid off. Let's take a look at the second example. Again, in the second example, some of the debts are still outstanding. We have used our indefinite pronoun, which is some, and some of the debts is our subject here. And if you look at the verb is are, which is plural in nature. So here what this sentence means, or what some in this sentence means, is that I have multiple debt, which is debt 1, debt 2 and debt 3. So all of these are my debts. So the sentence says that some of the debts are still outstanding. So probably I have paid this debt and this debt, but some of it is outstanding. So did you all understand the difference between the meaning of some in the first sentence and the meaning of some in the second sentence? In the first sentence, I am talking about the debt that I have. I am talking about only one debt, which is this, and I am saying that some of my only debt is paid off. In the second sentence, when I say some of the debts are still outstanding, that means that I have multiple debts, like in this case debt 1, debt 2 and debt 3, and some of them, probably debt 1 and debt 2 has been paid off, but some of the other debts are still outstanding. So just to summarize this quickly, the pronoun pronouns, they take the singular verb or the plural verb depending on its meaning. So once you all understand the meaning of the sentence, I would recommend you all to use the verbs accordingly, either the singular form or the plural form. Now the next thing that we're going to learn about are some of the problems that we face while studying or while implementing subject-verb agreement rules. These are problems because they make subject-verb agreement a little tricky and difficult. Let's go ahead and take a look at these problems. Let's look at the problems of subject-verb agreement. But you know what? Let me just not call them problems. Let me call them challenges. Let me use a positive word here, because challenges help us grow and help us improve. And similarly, these challenges in subject-verb agreement help us understand subject-verb agreement better, and they help us crack it. So let's look at the first challenge. The first challenge is prepositional phrases. To understand the challenge, let's take a look at these two examples here. The boy at the door is my brother. So what is the subject of this sentence? The subject is the boy. Okay, and if you look at the verb that has been used here is, and it's a singular verb. And what is this thing in between, at the door? This is nothing but a prepositional phrase which is giving us more information about the boy. So my objective here is to tell you that do not get distracted by these prepositional phrases that come in the middle of the sentence. These are not our subject. So the subject here is boy. So just make sure that the verb that you use in the sentence agrees with the subject boy. And since we are talking about the boy, our verb would be is. So the boy is my brother. The boy at the door is my brother. Let's take a look at the second example sentence. The car with many riders was speeding. Now this can create a lot of confusions. What is our subject here? First, the golden rule should be to identify the subject of a sentence, and then we can choose which verb to use. So the subject is car. This is our subject. And if we are talking about the car, then our verb should be singular because we are talking about a singular subject. But this thing that comes in between with many riders, and if you see, the word that is nearest the verb, which is riders, is plural in nature. Therefore, some students make the mistake of using a plural verb, but I do not want you to make this mistake. I want you to simply identify the subject of the sentence, which in this case is the car, and I want you to use a singular subject with it, since it's a singular subject. So, the car, let's not get distracted with many riders. The car was speeding. Which car was speeding? With many riders. And this is just a prepositional phrase because it is giving us more information about the subject. So I'm just going to repeat myself because this is a fatal error. You cannot make this error. When we have a sentence, we start with identifying the subject of a sentence and we do not get distracted by the prepositional phrases that are used in between the subject and the verb, and we use the verb according to the subject and not according to the prepositional phrase. Well, let's take a look at our second challenge of SVA, that is subject-verb agreement. So our second challenge is to do with clauses. Clauses primarily that begin with who, that and which. So let's take a look at this sentence. A dog that loves its owners deserves a reward. I know you might be getting a little confused here. Well, let me just start with dissecting this sentence. What is our subject? Our subject is a dog. So our subject is singular in nature. That means the verb that we use, which is deserves, should also be singular in nature. So we have a singular subject and a singular verb. What is this thing that loves its owners? This is nothing but a clause. And just be beware, guys, that here, since the last word of the clause is owners, students make the mistake of using a plural verb, and I do not want you guys to make that mistake. So we have a dog, which is our singular subject. Then we have that loves its owners, which is a clause that begins with that, and that is come somewhere in the middle of the sentence. And then we have deserves a reward. So deserves is our verb and dog is our subject, and these are the two things that we should keep in mind. Let's look at the next sentence here. Anyone who arrives late is welcome. So what is our subject here? Always start with identifying the subject. Our subject is anyone. And what is our verb here? It is. Because anyone is singular in nature, the verb that we use should also be singular in nature. And who arrives late is simply a distractor. It's a clause that starts with who, and I do not want you guys to get distracted by this distractor. So the second rule or the second challenge was pertaining to clauses. Let's take a look at the third challenge, which is when a sentence starts with there is, there are, here is, and here are. So the challenge here is that the subject comes after the verb. So in these sentences, the subject always came before the verb, but when sentences start with there is, there are, here is, here are, the subject comes after the verb. So there is an incomplete sentence here, and I'm going to complete it with you. There is a book on the table. On the table. So I have completed this sentence with you. So this sentence started with there is. Now is a singular verb. Therefore, the subject book here is also singular in nature. Let's take a look at the second incomplete example. There are. So here I have used the verb are, which is plural in nature. Therefore, I would say there are books on the table because I have used are, which is a plural verb. Therefore, I have to use a subject which is plural in nature as well, and therefore I have used the plural subject books. So these are the three challenges of SVA: prepositional phrases, clauses and sentences that start with there is, there are, here is, here are. I hope you all have understood these challenges that we face while studying subject-verb agreement, and I hope that you all never make these mistakes again. Well, until next time guys, happy learning.